There's a high drive, deep into right center field, to the big part of the ballpark. Number 71, and what a shot! Over the 421-foot marker. The deepest part of any ballpark in the National League. And Barry Bonds is now the home run king, number 71, and it was impressive.
It was impressive. An impressive call by John Miller, is one of the great broadcasters in baseball history. But this show is not going to be about John Miller. We're going to be talking about Barry Bonds. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, voice of the Lansing Lugnuts. This is Crafting the Call.
And my name is Josh Sushan, the voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes. And Jesse, I'm super excited about this week's episode. I had a front row seat in 2001. Back then, I was a newspaper reporter. I was on the Giants beat for the Oakland Tribune. And I'll never forget, there was early in that season, and Barry Bonds, in one of his more contentious interviews with the press, had said something along the lines of he didn't like that he was being asked to sign autographs or do interviews after the game. And he related it to movie stars and how at the end of the movie, you just go home. And he said that at some point in his career, he wanted to just say, don't miss the show. And so me and Dan Brown from the San Jose Mercury News, we had a rule that when Bonds came to the plate, our laptop screens would come down. We would not be writing. We would not be researching something. We would not be looking something up. We didn't want to miss the show, so our laptop screens came down.
It's beautiful. Do you remember the first ball player that when you were a kid growing up, you said, if he is at home plate, I will not miss this at bat?
Ooh, that's really tough because Ricky Henderson was my favorite player. And so it was more like once Ricky gets on first base, the show is really about to begin. But I think it would be some combination of Will Clark and Jose Canseco. You know, those were the icons in the Bay Area in the late 80s. And so those were the two that it was must-see TV.
I remember Vladimir Guerrero when he first came up with the Expos. And I would just go running around and tell people, Vladdy is batting, we need to watch. And then the McGuire-Sosa home run chase. And okay, they're at home plate. We need to watch. They're going to hit a home run. And then when Barry Bonds took it to the next level, it was true. Wherever you were, you stopped what you were doing and you watched his at-bats. And even now as a broadcaster, whenever there's a player who steps in where I go, this next pitch could be a home run. That is such a feeling unlike any other when you're watching a baseball game. This next pitch could be swatted out of the ballpark.
We had an episode earlier in which we were discussing this moment, making sure that you're ready for it. We have a player on our team named Sam Hilliard, and he was chasing the Isotopes career home run record. And so I made it a point of whenever he came to the plate, it's not a time to do this date in Isotopes history. It is not a time to talk about the background of the pitcher. It's not a time to talk about next week's promotions. This is a time to lock in on every pitch. And I really enjoyed that. And I feel like I learned a lot as a broadcaster about making sure that you truly understand the moment. And what we're going to do with this episode, Jesse, because look, there's a whole lot of Barry Bonds home run calls that we could do. But part of Barry Bonds' greatness, especially early in his career, was all of the different ways that he could beat you. And sometimes you're ready for it, and sometimes you're not ready for it. And so I think it's going to be really fun to look at Barry Bonds through his career and all of the legendary voices who described it.
Let's start at the very start, shall we?
All right, let's do it.
And here's Barry Bonds. All right, you got 10. 15 years from now, after this guy is an established star, in a game like this, in the midst of the season, the manager might sit him down and rest him, say you were saving Bonds. It's 10-2. What do you want?
Well, at least 15 years from now, if he went out of the game, at least he'd be able to go out and look at the statue.
Maybe. Might have trouble finding it. Some of those ideas. A ball and a strike. Boy, you're tough. 10-2 game, and you expect me to be Richard Pryor. Fly ball, well hit left field. Gerald Perry going back on the track at the wall. Goodbye. For Bonds, his first major league homer. He will remember Atlanta with fondness. And I hope his dad is somewhere where he could see that live. Now it's 11-2.
Well, he showed us something else he can do there. His first 2 base hits in this game were pulled to right field. This one, he goes the opposite way, left center field. He's got some power out that way. That's about a 400-foot shot where that ball landed. And he has driven in 4 runs in this game.
Okay, so many great things about that moment. That's 1986. That's Barry's first year in the major leagues. He's wearing uniform number 7. It's before he started to wear 24 with the Pirates in honor of his godfather, Willie Mays. You have the talk about the bad joke from Skip Carey, which is actually a really good joke. You have mention of a statue, which ends up happening. The mention of the power for Bonds going the other way. But also the context back then, Jesse, was this is Bobby Bonds' son. This wasn't Barry Bonds in 1986. This was Bobby Bonds' son. And I hope that Bobby is somewhere watching this live, really captures what it meant in 1986.
The transition, because you and I have called games that were 10-2, and I thought it was important to have it stated because there's no score bug on the screen. We're joking because this game is 10-2. There's nothing else to talk about. Hey, let's make a great pun. It's Barry Bonds. Let's see. Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy it. That deadpan goodbye. It's historic, right? That we look back on it and we go, here's number 1. But in the moment, in a route, to go opposite field, and then to launch right into the, hey, let's analyze this now. Let's get into what this was and what its meaning is and what it just showed about Barry. And now let's think about his dad.
And even the line, which is just a throwaway line, Barry's going to always remember Atlanta fondly. Well, not so much in 1991 and 1992 when Sid Bream was trying to score from second base, right?
You get the added levels of irony. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, that was 1986. That was Barry Bonds' first home run. But remember, Barry did a lot of different things. And by 1998, he was the most feared hitter in baseball. It was this interesting transition because, again, he comes up in 1986, and he's overshadowed by Will Clark, Jose Canseco, Pete Incaviglia, Wally Joyner, Danny Tartabull. And then 1989, 1990, Barry becomes the best player in baseball. 5-tool guy. As all the other guys start to slow down in their career, Barry takes it to a different level. He joins the Giants in 1993. He becomes the MVP that year. Probably should have won the MVP in 94, 95, 96, 97. Now we're going to skip ahead to 1998. And this is before intentional walks became a regular pattern with Barry Bonds. And this is something that blew our minds at the time. And then a few years later, we thought, yeah, all right, that makes sense.
He's the self-proclaimed best player of his generation. Nobody in the decade of the 90s has more home runs, more RBIs, more runs scored than that man.
Well, I remember a quote from Johnny Oates last year when he faced Ken Griffey Jr. with the bases loaded, and he didn't intentionally walk him, and Griffey went deep. And he said, if I had a 20-year contract, I would have walked Jr. with the bases loaded. And Olsen might want to do this here with Barry Bonds, but he won't. Olsen, 5 walks in the 9 batters that he has faced. And they're walking him with the bases loaded. An intentional walk to Barry Bonds.
Unbelievable.
Maybe he's got a 20-year contract.
This is flat out saying, I will not let you beat me.
This is history.
Wow.
Nine intentional walks, but this is the ultimate intentional walk with the bases loaded. Barry Bonds walks to drive in a run, making it 8-7.
Got Brett Maine on deck, a left-handed hitter. Probably we'll see Valdez. Now, Olsen has thrown so many pitches. It's a 6th walk, albeit that one intentional, but still don't see anyone coming out for Olsen.
Well, if a single is struck and 2 runs scored, you're questioning Buck Showalter. But if Maine is knocked out by Greg Olsen, well, Showalter's a genius, but Olsen has thrown 45 pitches.
I'll tell you, I don't necessarily disagree with the move.
I don't either.
If it works out. If this guy gets a base hit up the middle, I hope we have time. I might be all over Buck Showalter.
3-2, bases loaded. Tying run at third. Well, let's see. Here it comes, 3-2 pitch. Line to right field, but right there is the right fielder to make the catch, and Arizona has won in dramatic fashion after Buck Showalter walked Barry Bonds with the bases loaded to drive in a run to make it 8-7, but Greg Olsen closes it out with a line smash to right field by Brett Maine. Look his heart, Brent Brady. The Giants coming so close to winning this game. Maine hit it right in the screw, Steve. Too little.
All right, so that was Steve Physiok doing play-by-play and Steve Lyons as the color analyst. And perfect foreshadowing that Physiok has this story that he brings up. He starts telling the story before you can tell that the intentional walk is going to happen. But the look on Barry Bonds' face when he realizes that they are going to intentionally walk him with the bases loaded, Jesse, is really something.
Yeah, I think that this is altogether well crafted. The broadcasting is great before, during, after. The pictures are telling a brilliant story. They've got the camera on Bonds for the expression change when he realizes what is about to happen. It's beautiful.
Yeah, this is, to me, we talk a lot on Crafty and the Call about the play-by-play announcer working with the analyst, but the director, the producer, the shots, even as that at bat begins and they zoom in on Bonds and then they pull back, it's the left field camera, so you get the wide shot and then you zoom back in, and then they have it on his face when he realizes that he's being intentionally walked. Thought the chemistry between Physiok and Steve Lyons was outstanding in that one with their back and forth. And I think that Steve was really good in saying, I think I like this move, unless it doesn't work out, right? Because that's what everybody's thinking. I think I like this move if it works out.
That's what we want from a broadcast team, is to experience this with us. So they're adding the context to it. They're giving increased insight. And then they're reacting to it just as we are. And then the camera shot of the right fielder, right? Feel that heartbeat. Do you know that this is the only intentional walk for Greg Olsen the entire season? And he had a great season for the Arizona Diamondbacks. What a move by Buck Showalter. Do you know, quick trivia question, who's the only other player, a modern baseball player, to be intentionally walked with the bases loaded?
I could sit here and try and think of it, but that'd probably be bad. I do not know.
Josh Hamilton.
Really?
Yes. So it's such a cool thing. It's such a note of ultimate respect. And then you get into the larger conversation of, boy, those batters who hit behind Bonds, the pressure was on them because a pitcher did not want to pitch to him. Even when there was no place to put him, there was still a place to put him. But it starts with a story, which starts with the homework, which starts with Steve Physiok putting in the time and remembering. And this is the classic note for baseball broadcasters. I'm paraphrasing, but that your homework to broadcast a baseball game is not that day. It's not that week. It's your lifetime. And it's all of your conversations that you're having. It's all the listening that you're doing and your constant talking and going and putting in the legwork and reading. And you never know what's suddenly going to pop up in your memory, right at the forefront of your mind, right as a situation raises itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to echo that. Eat it, sleep it, breathe it, dream it, read it, read it, read it. You never know when something's going to come up, and you don't have time to quickly look it up on your laptop, right? You just have to know it. You have to just be in the moment to have it. And even if every detail from your story is not 100%, and I hate to say this as a journalist at heart, but you want to make sure that you have the crux of the story and that you can say the story quickly. You can't go into a super long story right there. And Physiok does a great job of just explaining the story quickly, and then now we're back in the moment.
And it's never Steve taking the microphone from Steve, right? It's always the two of them listening to each other and playing off of one another.
Okay, so that was the ultimate sign of respect, Barry Bonds getting intentionally walked. Let's look at another facet of Barry's game that was a huge part of his game, especially in the 1990s.
Bonds goes on the first pitch. Reed is up throwing, but Bonds has done it. Barry Bonds has become the second man in the history of baseball with 40 homers and 40 steals in one season. And he will take the base home. The fans here, many of whom are Giants fans, stand and applaud. Bonds pointing to his teammates who are applauding on the top step of the dugout. Something he has long said he wanted, and something as recently as 2 weeks ago he never felt he could accomplish this year.
Oh, that's great. And he said the reason he put a press on in September was that his teammates wanted him to do it. And he just did it. Good for you. What an accomplishment.
So that is Ted Robinson on the call, and that is Mike Krukow doing the color analysis. That is the radio call in which the TV has been added on there. A couple of things about this for proper context, Jesse. This was 1996. He became the second player to have a 40-40 season. The first was Jose Canseco. Famously, Jose said it was a goal of his going into the 1988 season. He didn't realize that nobody had ever done it before, and he had never done 30-30 before. And Canseco, brash as he was, just decided that he was going to do it, and then he did. The closest person who had ever come was Bobby Bonds, Barry's father. And there was a home run that was hit but was taken away because of a rainout. And Bobby was extremely close multiple times to doing 40-40. And Bobby also famously said, if I knew that it was such a big deal, then I would have done it. And so now this felt like Barry was kind of atoning for his father, right? That he was able to do what his father was not able to do. And it just added to the legacy of Bobby and Barry, the greatest home run stolen base duo in the history of baseball.
It also harkens to Ricky to me. How many times have you ever seen a guy steal a base and then take the base off its moorings? I mean,
not very often. Canseco did it, and a few others have, but it's really rare.
Yeah, it means something. And so Bonds with a pop-up slide and the time, and then raising that base and saying, this is mine, take this away. It's so good because you don't know if you're going to steal a base during the game. You don't know if you're going to get on. Probably your Barry Bonds, you're going to get on. But everything is just so graceful. And Ted Robinson's call is graceful. And then I love the added note as recently as 2 weeks ago, he didn't know if he could do it.
I also appreciated the little context that Mike Krukow said too, which was that Barry said that he wanted to do it because his teammates urged him on. And we know that over the years, Bonds and his teammates did not exactly always get along. And this was September. This was 1996. The Giants were completely out of the playoff race. They were terrible back then. And so anytime that you're going for stolen bases, there becomes this question amongst baseball people and fans about whether or not you're just chasing stats, whether or not you're doing this in pursuit of a victory, whether or not the stolen base actually matters or not. And so the idea that all of his teammates were on the top step, they were clapping, and that Mike Krukow gave the context that his teammates told him, we want you to do this. I think that it was a really smart, subtle way of Krukow saying something without saying something. He was basically saying it's okay that he did this, right? Because I think there were some people that were wondering, should he really be trying to chase stolen bases right now?
Yeah, it's individual, but it's individual supported. I mean, the stolen base in the first place, There were the accusations about Pudge Rodriguez, right, as a catcher, calling for fastballs in order for him to throw guys out, regardless of what the count actually called for. There are those batters who hate for their teammates to steal bases because it hurts them in the batter's box. There's a lot about the stolen base that suddenly there's the levied charge of selfishness on one person or another. Even though you and I can say, hey, you're moving yourself into scoring position, or you're putting pressure on the pitcher, whatever the case may be. So I really enjoy how all of this was handled. It's a larger moment, and yet it's a singular moment in the vacuum.
So here's the thing about Barry Bonds. It's never a simple conversation, right? It's always a complex conversation. And so maybe this is a good time to get into, Jesse, if people are tuning into this episode, however long we've been recording now, and they are looking for some sort of great pontification about Barry Bonds and steroids, well, you're probably not going to get that. But what you are about to see is a much larger Barry Bonds than some of the clips that we're about to show next.
I mean, it speaks for itself. We can speak for it. But the place where I always come down within this show is, as Kraft in the Call, we are examining the broadcasters. We're examining how the broadcasters are calling this. How are they choosing? What's their philosophy? What words do they use? And what is the spirit of it? Like, as we just said, the conversations that they're having away from the microphone, and what do they bring to the microphone? And then beyond that, it is highly important to chronicle baseball history. It is important to say, here is what happened. And then while we're doing this, we can say everything around that. We can say, oh, by the way, read more, look this up. There's a reason for this controversy. There's a reason for this person to be a polarizing figure. You don't have to look away from it. It's all in existence all at the same time.
I think it's really easy as a broadcaster to let how you feel about a player impact how you describe a moment. And I would say that, especially if you're a visiting broadcaster who is, their team is playing the Giants, and Barry Bonds is beating you all kinds of different ways. And it probably gets really annoying that Bonds is beating you in all these different ways. And then also, surely you're aware of the prickly personality that Bonds had. Maybe there was some type of interaction that you tried to have with him around the batting cage, sometime before the game or after the game, and he blew you off the way that he blew off everybody. Barry was an equal opportunity blower offer. And so maybe that impacts
difficult opponent.
Right. So maybe that impacts the way that you describe things. Even as the team broadcasters, I don't want to speak for Kipe and Kruk and John Miller and Ted Robinson about what their relationship was. It was probably very professional. I'm sure that there was times that they got along and were hanging out and they were chummy, and there was other times that Barry wanted nothing to do with them because Barry was very much a loner and really didn't want to spend a whole lot of time talking to anybody. But your job as the announcers, as you said, Jesse, capture history. This is what the fans are paying money to see, whether they are cheering or booing or whatever it is that they are doing. People paid money to watch Barry Bonds, to watch him on television, to listen to him on the radio. Let people know, when is Barry coming up next? Because you never know what he's going to do. And it was must-see TV constantly.
This is a larger conversation. When I speak to our players and coaches, I learn who they don't like on other teams, whether that's a manager or a coach or a player. I learn which umpires they do not like. And so that can poison my opinion of that person. This is separate from how I might feel, whether I might have somebody rankle me, or the opposite, whether I admire someone and how they go about their business. So I do think that broadcasters' opinions get colored for various reasons. And then it's okay, so your opinion has been colored. It's a difficult thing to get away from. You're a human being. I think it was Ernie Harwell who wrote about the chasm that he tried to develop in terms of his relationship between his own team, because he didn't want his opinion to be colored too much in his own players. He couldn't get too close. He found that affected things adversely. So here's the most famous guy in baseball. You are going to have an opinion of him. How are you going to cover him?
All right, so let's get to another example where Barry Bonds' complete and total greatness was on display.
On the ground, towards the hole and into the hole. Here comes Bonds. He gets to it. Here's his throw. It's on line. They got him! It can still do it.
With one of the quickest releases in the game, Barry Bonds unloads a strike to Torrealba that seals off Counsell. And right now, Counsell just wants to get out of town. It has been that kind of series for him. A one-hop, perfect strike. See ya. It's the best throw he's got, and he came up in crunch time. If you're a catcher, you cannot ask for a better throw.
So now it's Finley.
And the reaction from Morel, you bet.
Once again, the work of the San Francisco Giants television broadcast crew, all those angles, all those replays, the reaction shot of the pitcher, Tim Morel, everything is just unbelievable how just spectacular they are in every way.
I'm also going, in today's day and age, is a catcher allowed to block the plate like that before the throw arrives? But yeah, the angle of the throw, where you get to actually see it traveling in a straight line and one hopping in. And the call was right on it by Kipe, right on line. They got him with the punch. That's perfect.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on crafting the call, discussing how to hang on to that word. They, and I get self-conscious about going too long. I don't want to go they, but his timing, they got him right as the umpire. Do you ever do that, Jesse, when you're waiting, you think it's out, but you want to wait, and then you kind of do this with the umpire as you say got him?
Yes, I do the same thing with home runs where I'm watching for that signal. It's out, safe. I'm trying to get it right as the umpire signals it. And then boom, because the second that happens is the second the crowd is going to react. And you can't be behind the crowd. So you've got to hit it with the umpire and let the crowd react to both of you.
Yeah, I've definitely done the same thing. I don't do it on a regular basis, but when it's a really big moment and I'm on the air, maybe it's like a potential double play grounder and it's really close, or a play at the plate, and I'll say on the air, he is out, or safe or something like that.
John
Just
Miller
because
was
I want to,
yes.
I want to feel the energy. I want to be a part of it. I want to know later how it affects my voice and how it sounds when I do this with my arms, when I do this with my arms, when I do this, those types of human reactions.
Well, and it comes forth on air. If you're not feeling it, if you're not reflecting it and sending it right through, the people listening will not get it. So it is up to us to take all that energy from the field and send it right into the microphone.
Okay, so Barry Bonds threw out Curry Counsell at home plate that day, but his day was not done. That kept the game tied. And you know who was leading off the bottom of the ninth inning? Yep,
I got to guess.
Barry Bonds.
Swinging a drive. Left center field. This one is over. Don't ever say never.
Happy birthday, Barry Bonds.
And this place is going wild. They've won 8 in a row, and they lead the West by 11. Bonds is going to take his lumber, and he's going to take a bow and say, folks, thanks for coming to my party.
One pitch. Myers trying to get ahead with the first pitch strike. And Bonds says, not on my birthday, big boy. And a splash look at 6:46. Goes left center field. And the Diamondbacks are just stunned.
I think he knew it.
I was at this game, Jesse. I wrote a story for the Oakland Tribune the next day about it. Couple of things about the call. First of all, Dwayne Kuiper, my goodness. What I would do to have his pipes for one day, right? I mean, his voice, he's called smooth for a reason because his voice is so smooth, but then so deep. This one is over.
It's not his home run call.
Right.
Right? Which I find really honest. Everything about this is such an honest call about what Barry has just done for them in this game and in general, but Kruk immediately going to, it's his 39th birthday. Everything is honest. And then the camera shots of Barry looking up, all the Giants players laying hands on him at home plate. His poor back.
So speaking of his poor back, yes. So Kuiper says they won 8 in a row. They lead the West by 11.
Yes.
This was 2003. This was July 24th. It's late July, and they lead the West by 11. Mike Krukow later adding number 646 career home runs.
Yeah.
Right after this, Barry did not talk to the reporters that day, not because he was in a bad mood, but because he was rushing off to go see his father. Bobby was in the hospital. Bobby was the final days of Bobby's life. We didn't know how serious Bobby's condition was. Barry just walked by and said, I have to go. My dad's in the hospital. That's all that we knew. It was in the days that followed that we realized how serious it was and that Bobby passed away a few days after that. Barry took a couple days. And so you mentioned the weight that was on Barry's shoulders, knowing that his father was in the hospital, that he was sick. It was a day game. This is a chance for the Giants to put away the Diamondbacks in late July, right? This completed a sweep. And for Barry to have the throw and then the home run off this side winding left-hander named Mike Myers, to me, that was the epitome of Barry Bonds' not just greatness, but how dramatic his greatness was.
Yeah, Mike Myers, so tough on left-handed hitters. Not Barry. But you're in that press box. Did it feel inevitable as he stepped up to the plate? Did you know he's going to end it right here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things. Now, I don't remember exactly because it was 21 years ago, but there was numerous times where I would just feel like Barry's going to hit one. Like you just know he's going to hit it. When Barry hit his 500th, I knew it as he was walking on the plate. I said, right here, right now, this is going to be the 500th. And again, day game, which was so great because you don't have to worry about like filing a story on deadline. The laptop is down. I'm just watching. I'm not trying to craft out my story really fast because deadline's approaching in 20 minutes. I can just take this whole thing in. And again, the throw home, everyone's on their feet. And then you've got the whole half inning realizing there's Barry in the on-deck circle. He's leading off the inning. We know what he's going to do here. The only question is first pitch or fifth pitch.
If I may levy some criticism at Kuip, I think that he wants to sit back and bask in this moment. And so some of his words are words that he says because he understands that the broadcaster should say it, right? This crowd is going wild. But it just feels like he's saying it as he's got a big smile on his face and he's like, we know what's going on. I should say that the crowd is going wild, but this is something else. And I just picture the two of them sitting in the broadcast booth, just smiling from ear to ear at each other.
Whenever you have a player, whether it's Barry Bonds, Tony Gwynn, Ricky Henderson, right? The greats of the greats, it's so easy. We just talked about, did you know it? Yeah, you knew it. And it's so easy to just like assume that they're going to do it and to forget how hard it is to do it, how easy it is to take for granted what it is that they do. And so the ability to continuously be in the moment, even when you see something on a regular basis, is not easy, but it's important.
Well, and we talked in an earlier show about John Sterling saying that broadcasters overuse the word unbelievable because it's a crutch word. When we don't know what to say, it's a word that we can reach for. And there are moments, especially if you're someone who loves the game and loves seeing the game done at its pinnacle. What do you say then? What do you say then when you're enjoying yourself so much, when you're at the height of your admiration? How do you find the proper words to describe that feeling that is swelling up within you when you have just witnessed this?
As you said that, what came to my mind about what I would say would be the phrase, just enjoy it. Don't take it for granted. Enjoy every moment of this show that we are watching, that we are privileged enough to watch, to describe, to cheer about, to write about. Just enjoy, appreciate what is transpiring, because this isn't normal.
Yeah. So I want you to imagine if Kipe and Kruk had, with their call, directed it at an audience. If they had called it directly to Barry, or if they had called it directly to the fans, as we had heard Skip Carey do so before. Like, do not forget this man, that on his birthday, he has brought you 11 games up, and whatever it might be, whatever you want to say, and however you share it, like that direction to it. Or just, Barry, you've done it again, and you've done it in a grander form than we've seen it done before. Throwing out counsel and then winning it with whatever it might be, whatever form the words take. This is the fun of broadcasting, is you can say, what direction do I want to take this? He has thrown counsel out at the plate. He has walked off with a home run. It is his 39th birthday. The Giants have won 8 consecutive games. So it is up to me. And this is where, Josh, I'm going to turn things around on you, because you are the person in the driver's seat. You are the newspaper reporter who gets to come up with the lead. And if you don't mind, I would like you to share that lead, because I think you did a brilliant job in saying, all right, what should I do? How can I summarize this at the start of it all?
All right. Let's see how I wrote about that moment.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, shout out to newspapers.com for existing and for having the Oakland Tribune stories on its website. So this is the headline, Bonds' bash. We have the quote that I got from Jason Christensen in the clubhouse. First pitch, he's going to take him deep right here, no joke. We have the final, we have the next game, radio, TV. We have this incredible photograph, which was taken by John Green of the Oakland Tribune with the home run. And then we have home run complete sweep, and we have the photo at home plate. Caroline New had that one, so it looks like we double staffed that day game. The headline, home run complete sweep. The subhead, Bonds throws out D-back at the plate, then hits winning blast. Of course, Dateline San Francisco. Barry Bonds can't throw anymore. He'll tell you that. Makes fun of his arm all the time, too. But it's almost as if Bonds knows he has one bullet in his arm per week, and it's just a matter of picking the right time to use it. Bonds picked his 39th birthday in the 9th inning Thursday afternoon with his team tied, a hit heading his way, and the go-ahead run racing to the plate.
I mean, that's the notion that you were left with, that you wanted to impress upon the reader. And that is what I think is what we can do. How fun is that to say, I witnessed something and now I get to share that with you?
Well, it's unbelievably fun, right? Like I look back at my 10 years as a newspaper reporter, and one part of my brain thinks, man, I wish I would have gotten into play-by-play sooner, right? It's what I always wanted to do. I wish I would have gotten this sooner. And sometimes you start to play the what if game. But I also know that I am such a better broadcaster, Jesse, because of those 10 years writing. Objectively, maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe my confidence wasn't there. My voice wasn't there. Maybe my knowledge was there. Maybe it was not there. But I am such a better broadcaster because I learned how to write, because I learned how to interview people, because I learned how to think through what is the story, how to start off the story, how to end the story. And I know that ultimately it's made me better, even if it took me on a 10-year detour from where I ultimately am now.
I think that if a broadcaster can do that, and Vin Scully, we talk about how he lets the game breathe, but he's also letting his brain percolate into how he sums this up and what is his lead. I think if a broadcaster is able to find that lead and is able to sum things up as the crowd is going bonkers, as the pictures are showing on your screen, or if you're the radio person and you're painting that picture, I think that elevates the moment.
So the other thing that you don't know as the newspaper reporter is I'm filing this story probably sometime around 5 p.m. or so, since it was a day game. You don't know what the headline's going to be. I don't write the headline. I don't know how the story's going to be played in the paper. So let's actually pan out to see more about how this played out, because I had a really slow developing lead, right? I don't even mention the home run and the final score until the jump. Okay, so let's see. We had a story about the Raiders. Only time will tell, because the Raiders always has to go at the top, right? We have a story about Stanford tennis. We have a shutout from the Oakland A's. And then we have the column from Monty Poole, one of my all-time favorite columnists as well. And so that's also one of those times, Jesse, where me and Monty are talking. Okay, what angle are you going to have? What angle am I going to have, right? And when the columnist shows up to a day game, you know he's going to write about Barry Bonds, right? He should write about Barry Bonds. That's the whole point of being a columnist who shows up to a day game. You write about Barry Bonds. You should every single time. And so then it very much becomes, okay, what's going to be your angle when it comes to Barry Bonds compared to what is going to be my angle? And so what Monty did, I'm zooming in here on Monty, and Bonds leaves party at the park. And so this was Monty writing about, this is Barry's birthday. And this is him. He's vanishing. He's leaving to go see his dad, which he gets to on the jump, which I don't feel like jumping to that page on newspapers.com. So it's very much, okay, you've got the birthday angle. You've got that he left quickly, that he's going to see his dad. And so then me as the beat writer, what do I have? That's why
you got the game.
Yeah, that's why I went with the throw. The throw is what set it up. That's the knock against Barry. He can't throw anymore, doesn't even bother trying to throw people out. And that's why I went with that lead. He knows that he's only got one bullet in his arm per week, and he's going to save it. He's not going to waste his time trying to throw somebody out that he know he can't throw out. He's just going to throw to second base to keep the double play alive for the next batter. He was actually really smart about that. For as great as he was really smart about understanding what he can and can't do. And so he wouldn't try to do something he couldn't do. He would just throw it to second base. I'm going to keep the double play alive for the next batter. But then moments like this, Jesse, is when he would use the one bullet in his arm.
I think that this is such a great example of why I love newspapers. Like crafting the call, we're talking about the broadcast. The broadcast shows what it shows, right? The broadcast shows the moment and then the after moment at home plate, and then Bonds coming out of the dugout for the encore. And then we've got everything else. And you've got Jason Christensen and his whole reaction to the thing. And Monty's got, oh, by the way, what nobody saw was that Barry left, and here's why he left. It's really such a great example of everything working together. And then I would say, as the broadcaster, that the next day at the ballpark, on the very next broadcast, I would then reference both of you, right? I would quote Jason Christensen. I would quote Monty and say, here's the things that happened that you didn't know about after the game. And that is how each game and each moment and each story leads into the next one, as you're continuing to tell many stories that are all part of a bigger story.
I'm probably going to sound like an old man here, but I appreciated how things moved quickly in 2003, but they didn't move that quickly. Twitter didn't exist. Social media didn't exist. If it did, it would just be an avalanche of all of these stories coming at us. We would know it in real time. We would know it immediately after the game. Back in 2003, you didn't know these things until you picked up the newspaper the next day, until you read about it. And so it was more of a day-to-day coverage of baseball, as opposed to an hour to hour, or even minute by minute, which we get into now with Twitter and things like that. I remember being taught that when you cover a baseball team, think of it as 162 chapters in a book. And each day, the game story is the chapter in the book. And I tried to take that approach. And now I try to take that same approach, Jesse, with the broadcast, right? And a lot of times, minor league baseball, we don't have the coverage that they do in the major leagues. So we actually do have the opportunity. It truly is day-to-day, right? It's day-to-day coverage. This is what happened yesterday. This is what's happening right now. And this is what might happen over the rest of today and the rest of this week.
Yeah, it's up to us to find the post-game quotes and the pre-game quotes and to incorporate it. I mean, I did not expect that this would turn into a tribute to newspapers, but goodness, whenever I see an article written by a beat writer, or whenever anyone comes out to cover, or I see an interview, anything that anyone else is doing in addition to my work, it's so great because they have found an angle that I didn't find. I'm working mine. I'm processing things this way, and then I get to work off of their work. I get to piggyback off of it. I get to tell their stories. I get to say, hey, read this. You can learn even more about that. And so I enjoy the way that all of this comes together to tell the full story of the team and the individual and the game.
All right. We have time for one more at bat. This is the at bat that Barry Bonds said was the best of his life, the most satisfying of his career.
Another good 2.
Oh, 98 on the corner inside. And the gun here at the stadium said 99. Whatever it was fast and the location was perfect.
Two and two, or make it 1 and 2.
Tried to backdoor him a little breaking ball, and he just missed.
One and 2. Two.
Again, trying to go after his corner inside.
Well, the stadium gun here has 2 zeros.
Well, that can mean only one thing, partner. 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
On the play. This is a pretty good matchup.
I'm digging it.
I love the pitch timer, but I'm glad there was no pitch timer back
You
then.
got Cy Young going against MVP, a 6-time MVP guy.
2 and 2.
I think he shook off the changeup. He wants to go fastball in.
Well, that's going to end up in the water. But, that's a 101-mile-per-hour fastball pulled foul.
Is that a quick bat? Gagne shook off the changeup. He shook off the fastball away. He got the fastball in at 101. Wow.
It stays 2 and 2. Center field. Hit well. This baby's going to go out of here. At 100 miles per hour.
Wow.
Kuip is very minimal, right? The entire time he's staying utterly minimal, 2 and 2. And it's Kruk who's telling the story. It's Kruk who's bringing it right along in terms of the numbers and what do the numbers mean and what is Gagne trying to do and what kind of heat is he bringing, and that therefore what is Barry up against and what is Barry doing and turning on this fastball at 100, 2 zeros up there. And meanwhile, Kuip is just sitting back, and it's painting in minimalism as Barry is up against a pitcher with unbelievable stuff in Eric Gagne.
Even the way that Kruko describes, he shook to the fastball, right? So I've watched a lot of interviews with both Eric Gagne and Barry Bonds over the years about this at bat. And both of them have agreed that they were on a tour in Japan together in the offseason, and they had some type of discussion in which Barry said, you need to pitch to me. You know, Billy Wagner pitches to me in the 9th inning. You need to pitch to me. And Gagne was like, I can't pitch to you if the game's on the line. But if a home run will not decide the game, then I'll come after you. And then there was some sort of discussion. I've heard Gagne say that he only got to throw one type of breaking ball, and Barry say that he only got to throw one total breaking ball. So maybe there's a little bit that's kind of been forgotten over there. But the idea was, in that clip that we just showed, didn't have it. There's another clip where Barry comes to the plate and he looks at Gagne and he kind of straightens his helmet like this. And it's like him saying, remember that conversation in Japan? Let's go, right? It's a 3-0 game. There's only one batter on base. Let's go. Here we go. And I've thoroughly enjoyed watching both Gagne and Barry just describe that confrontation. That is just the ultimate example. Pitcher versus batter. This is what makes baseball so compelling.
I mean, it makes me think of an all-star game. We've got the very best against the very best. And it's like, hey, the larger game, set it aside. This pitcher is going to be bringing his best stuff against this very great batter, and here we go. It's Pedro against McGuire.
Man, you just made me think about some of the great moments in All-Star history, right? Where Dwight Gooden comes in, and the story is Dwight Gooden, or Pedro Martinez, or Randy Johnson and John Kruk with the helmet backwards, right? And these are the moments that we live for, Jesse, as fans, as broadcasters. And I think that when you do get to these moments, I want to go back to what you said about minimal. It can become so much more dramatic when you just say fewer words.
Yeah.
And that's where make sure young broadcasters find a way to get a crowd microphone in the best location that you can. Whatever it takes, get something to establish this is what the crowd is doing. And then minimal words. Keep it brief. Let the crowd, the minimal words, tell the story.
The minimalism of Kipe and then Kruko's joy made me think about Summerall and Madden and the way that they would call a football game, with Pat Summerall's minimalism and John Madden's absolute happiness at seeing these guys slam into each other.
And this is, again, where I go back to my newspaper background. At this point, it's not about where Eric Gagne's from. It's not about when he was drafted. It's not about how many years he spent in the major leagues. It has nothing to do with who's at first base and how big of a lead he's got. Maybe you want to say, an infield shift is happening because you want to get that out of the way. But this is just about pitcher, batter. Nothing else matters in this moment. It's not even a potential game-tying home run. So really it comes back to that lead paragraph. So I think as broadcasters, Jesse, it's the more that I kind of talk this through with you, and I'm loving this episode even more than I thought that I would love it. I really do think it's a good reminder that whether it's a dramatic moment between MVP versus Cy Young, whether it's the third inning of a game between, in the Midwest League and the Pacific Coast League, what's the story? What's the lead paragraph right now? What should we be focused on? Because this is what matters most.
Yes. Set it out and then see what happens and then react to it accordingly. But it really is like the action hero coming in to save the day. You hope Casey sometimes does strike out at the bat. But when that figure advances up to home plate, who you have to close your laptop, what happens next? And how do you frame it? And how do you share it?
With that in mind, I think it's time to close our laptops on this episode, Jesse.
I think that's a fine idea. This was a blast.
I'm Josh Sushan with the Albuquerque Isotopes. He's Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnets. Thank you for watching Crafting the Call. We will talk to you next week.